Ah, yes, we're back. Wow. Yes, we are back, and we're going to be talking standards with Mr. Alan Michael, who is the Senior Standardization Officer at the Antigua and Barbuda Bureau of Standards. Mr. Michael, are you there?
Yes, good afternoon, Al.
All right.
And good afternoon to your audience.
Okay. Do many people have a problem announcing or pronouncing your title? Standardization. It's kind of like a very long word, and it's too many syllables.
Yeah.
Yes, I think they should standardize that word a bit. All right, great. So, I got some notes concerning what we're going to talk about today, and today we're simply going to talk about what is a standard, and I guess what it isn't. And the first thing I saw, which was I don't quite understand that, is that it says in the notes that I received is that a standard is a document for voluntary use. Is that true?
Yes, a standard is voluntary. You use it if you want to, or if you don't, you don't.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, that's the official definition of, well, that's the official, what you would call it, the purpose of a standard. There's another type of document, which is generally based on a standard, but not always, but that is mandatory. And that is something we will talk about at a later date.
Okay. So when we say things are below standard, above standard, and double standards, all of these things are just voluntary concepts, or am I talking about something different?
Well, I think culturally, our use of the word standard is a little different than how the Bureau looks at it. Right? So that is where that, but those terms still apply, right? Because as we will go forward, you see, a standard outlines a minimum set of specifications acceptable to the relevant stakeholders. So, being that it's the minimum that people can live with, you can be above standard and below standard, right? If you exceed the requirements, that means you meet all the requirements of the standard and have additional requirements, or that would be above. And if you do not meet the requirements of the standard, then you will be below standard.
Okay, and I guess that sort of goes into the second point, which is a standard outlines a minimum set of specifications acceptable to the relevant stakeholders.
Yes.
All right, would you like to elaborate?
Well, we have standards in several different areas. You may have standards for construction. In that area, the stakeholders, the persons involved in construction, like the contractors, the
home builder, the homeowner,
the workers, the homeowner, the bank, everybody who is involved. So those are the persons who are generally required to sit and discuss what the content of standards and so on would be.
So is the Bureau of Standards such a broad organization? Do you actually deal with matters having to do with construction, or is it things that simply have to do with weight and measures and things like that?
Well, in the area of standards, yeah, we do. We are not necessarily the persons with the expertise in the areas, but we will generally, especially when we are looking to develop standards and so on, we will get all of these persons together to discuss the content of the standard. The content of our standard is agreed upon by consensus of the persons in the field.
And I guess you can tell us what that means. When you say consensus, everybody has to agree, or can the professionals agree on one standard, but the patrons or whatever not be in agreement, but it's still a standard?
Well, in that thing, you try to get as much of a consensus as possible. As we say, it's the minimum level that people can agree on. So if you're discussing something at a certain level and it cannot be agreed upon, you may not include that in the standard, at least not in the first iteration, because the standard is also a living document. It doesn't necessarily stay as is forever, because as information improves and so on, standards, you would upgrade the standards and so on in that aspect.
Okay. Well, Danet Semper John online, she says a standard or standards, something set up or established by an authority as a rule for the measure of quantity, efficiencies, right? Yes, that's the word, efficiencies, and what's this word here? Interoperability.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Interoperability. So interoperability, do you have any idea on what she means by that?
Well, for instance, let's say take something that we are commonly using now, like a USB cable. You have different, for example, USB-C cable.
I'm familiar with that.
Yeah. Right. Different manufacturers have them on their devices.
Yes.
Right? But you have to make it so the standard declares how it's the size, how it's made up, the components, the wiring, and so on, so that cable made by Apple can fit into a Samsung phone and still transfer the data. So that is the interoperability. You can have different people making it, but they all end up being able to perform the use. Right? Because if Apple was making, well, we have had things where Apple makes a device with a particular type of connector, and nobody else has that.
Like a lightning cable.
Right. So if you don't have that, you can't connect to an Apple device.
Yes, especially when they take off the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, and then they replace it with the the lightning cable, the lightning cable or whatever.
Yes.
No, not the Thunderbolt. They call that one the Lightning. That's for the iPhone. That's what the iPhone uses currently.
Yeah, it's basically the same. They have the same symbol. It's you can, but it's the same, the interoperability, right? That you're supposed to be able to connect one device with another. It's the same thing like your electrical outlets in your house, right? You can buy several different types of devices, but you can plug all of them into the AC outlet in your house because of the standard of the outlet and the plug.
Yes. Danet Semper John continues. She said the point of a standard is to provide a reliable basis for people to share the same expectations about a product or a service. This helps to facilitate trade, provide a framework for achieving economies, efficiencies, and interoperability.
Yes, we are trying to avoid those kind of words. But
yes,
she is correct.
But I guess someone like you with a title such as Standardization Officer, Interoperability, just rolls off the tongue. Oh boy, I'm still struggling with that word. It reminds me of another word. What was that word? Anyway, I don't think I'll try and remember that.
Another important point.
Hold a second there. We seem to be having a caller coming in, so let me see if the call is about this topic. Caller, are you there?
Hi, Al.
Hi, Al. Yes, we're
And,
talking about standards. So
yes,
okay.
it's a saying, a standard, a flag, a banner,
Mm-hmm.
etc., as an emblem of a military unit, and then it's saying something established for use as
Mm-hmm.
a rule
Mm.
or basis of comparison in measuring quantity, quality, value, etc. at upright support, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it says use conforming to a standard or a model, okay, generally accepted as reliable or authoritative, typical, ordinary. So
Mm.
that's all saying about standards.
Excellent. All right. Thank you.
Yes, the only
Yes.
thing I would say there is that the standard, as it refers to a flag or banner,
Mm-hmm.
is a little different than what we're talking about here,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
right?
Except for that, you
Um,
don't want somebody, drawing your flag upside down or anything like that.
right,
You want all
yes,
your flags to look sort of uniformed,
they
or
should look
using
the
the wrong
same,
colors, and so like a
yes,
navy
hmm,
blue instead of a royal blue or something.
yeah,
Mm-hmm. All right.
okay,
But
but
yeah, go ahead.
the important thing, right? The standard is basically the collective wisdom of people with expertise in the subject matter and
Mm-hmm.
who understand the needs of the stakeholders they represent. So the persons who will sit down to discuss the content and so on, because you can actually think of a standard as a formula that describes the best way to do something,
Mm.
right? And
Excellent.
that is
Yeah,
what
makes
it
sense.
strives to, that's what persons try to achieve
Mm-hmm.
when they sit down to discuss what the content of standards and so on should be.
Excellent. I must say, before the conversation, I was struggling to figure out where does document come in, but I think I now get it. It's that you basically you have certain things that you want everybody to agree on, and of course, the only way I guess you can sort of lay it out is by documenting it in some form or
Yes,
fashion, and that's where that comes in.
yeah.
All right. Yeah. So any final thoughts on standards?
Well, we also have, here now we've been talking about documentary standards,
Mm.
but at the Bureau we also use physical standards, right?
Mm.
And these are objects or devices that are accepted everywhere in the world to represent or generate a specific value. And when we speak of value, value here means a magnitude or size plus a unit. So, for instance, we may speak of 1 kilogram or 10 kilograms or 2 meters or, those kind of things. So there's the physical standards that represent these type of devices or things that we use in measurement.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Alan Michael. This was truly informative and, I don't know, enlightening for me. All right. So, yeah, I'm sure
Yes.
we'll talk again more about standards. Thanks again.
Okay, no problem.